Hello everyone, I'm Joe Cronin and welcome to the Toss-Up. We're switching things up a little bit this time around as we're going to be talking about the GOAT debate, and no, not the animal, the best to ever do it. So stick around and yes, buckle up because it's all next on the Toss-Up. There we go. One of the hardest hitting questions in the sporting world is who is the best to do it, and in our case, the GOAT. What qualifies as the greatest, and more importantly, can anyone overtake the best or the GOAT in the future? Here to debate the impossible is Ryan Crakes, Thomas Crow, and Dylan Beach. Great set of panelists here today. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining, and let's waste no time. Let's start with football. Ryan, we're going to you, yes, the best to ever do it on the gridiron.
You know, Joe, I'm happy to start us off here because it may not be the most creative answer, but I think it's the right one. It's Tom Brady.
It's hard to argue against that.
When you want to talk about stats, when you want to talk about notoriety, competitive nature, he's king in all of it. I mean, there's really no place you can argue that it's not Tom Brady. He has enough Super Bowls, and what left is there to argue?
That is true. He has more Super Bowls than any one franchise does alone. He's 7 to be exact, and leads all time in passing yards, passing touchdowns, really any stat you can imagine. Thomas.
Yeah, with Ryan being from New Hampshire, he might be biased, but I don't think so
Wow.
on this one.
Wow.
I agree, it's Tom Brady. I think it's one thing to win 6, but to separate from Belichick and go get that 7th with Tampa Bay is just another story. Nobody's going to touch him right now, and it might be a long while till someone gets to that point.
We on the Brady train, Dylan?
Yeah, as a Colts fan, it really pains me to admit, but it's got to be Brady. I mean, he's the greatest to ever do it. I mean, he overtook Manning a long time ago. I think the only hope for us for a while may be Mahomes to maybe catch him.
That's where I was going to kind of follow up with. We've seen Patrick Mahomes burst onto the scene in 2018. He's been electric in his really short career up to this point. Already has 3 Super Bowls, multi-MVP. Dylan, I'll go right back to you. What do you think it will take for Mahomes? Like, how many Super Bowls, how many MVPs, and does he have what it takes to be able to overtake Brady?
I mean, right now the pacing is good. I think he may have a chance to get there. I mean, he's got so many Super Bowls already. He keeps on winning. They look to be the next great dynasty. So, I mean, anything could happen. Who knows if in a few years we could be having a completely different conversation about this.
Thomas?
I would say this next year has a huge influence on it. No quarterback, no team has ever gone back-to-back-to-back. If he's able to accomplish that, get 3 in a row, I think that puts him in a pedigree where it's just him and Brady. And then I think if he wins 1 more, maybe 2 more after that, you really, really start having that conversation.
Yeah, after he won this one this year, there was a lot of talks about, could he be the next GOAT that we have in the sport?
Well, honestly, for me, with all the respect to Patrick Mahomes, I have a lot of high hopes for him, and I think he's going to be phenomenal. I'd say for right now, though, maybe we should pump the brakes a little bit. When you want to talk about Tom Brady, 3 Hall of Fame careers in there, he's got 1 of them. So let's give Patrick Mahomes 5 or 6 more years. Let's see where he's at that point. But once again, I don't see it as impossible.
Something I am curious about with the pairing of the Andy Reid and Mahomes, similar to that of Brady Belichick, is will there be a moment maybe that they're separate and you kind of realize who was the true mastermind in that sense? Maybe not. That's a bit of too much predicting of the future. Moving on, we'll stay with football, move away from quarterbacks because quarterback is the most important position on the field, so obviously it's going to produce the best player with Tom Brady. Ryan, I'll go with you for this first one. Non-quarterback, who is the best to do it? And this could be tough because there's a lot of different positions out there that have shined.
Yeah, once again, it may not be the most creative answer, but I'm going to go with Jerry Rice. And when you look at the stats, what does he not have as a receiver? One of the greatest weapons in the history of the NFL. His numbers after the age of 35 are ridiculous. And with multiple teams, with multiple quarterbacks, he's been probably the most consistent player on the offensive side of the ball in NFL history, and I think it's hard to argue against Jerry Rice.
Especially at that receiver position to have, 19, 20-year career, and his records look pretty much untouchable. Yeah. I mean, even the 17-game season, he would have to play for 18 years to get some of his records. Thomas?
Right, I had Jerry Rice as well, but I'll switch it up. I'll go with Emmitt Smith. 18,000 yards, the best longevity that you see from a running back. He had 1,000-yard season after 1,000-yard season, not just early in his career, but late into his career. He has the Super Bowls. There might be other running backs that you can look at and say they were maybe more talented. But if you look at the overall pedigree of what Emmitt Smith did as a Cowboy, I think he's untouchable.
It was also a pretty stacked team those Cowboys had. And rings, it's interesting the way that people debate the way that rings go. It's always they go to the quarterback. And I like how you have this ring talk with Emmitt Smith's ability and why it boosts him. Dylan.
Yeah, I was also going to go Jerry Rice. Popular pick
Wow.
today, but I'll pivot. I'll go to another receiver, Randy Moss. I think just a dominant run, a very dominant receiver, maybe one of the best we've ever seen. But I think another conversation we had is that if he doesn't retire, I'd be saying these things about Calvin Johnson right now. Megatron. I think he was on pace to maybe be the GOAT, but he got to Detroit about 10 years too early for their good era.
That is true. That is still the best player I think I've ever seen, like in person, is Calvin Johnson. 6'5", could run like a 4.3 40. Moss anyone, and I guess we use the term Moss. We don't use the term Rice. You don't Rice
That's a good
people,
point.
you Moss
That's a good point.
Yeah,
I'll give you that one.
I am surprised no mention of Lawrence Taylor, the last defensive player to win an MVP, and just was a freak athlete. I mean, there's a season he played 12 games and had 16 sacks. It's stuff like that that you almost can't compete with. We're going to stick with football briefly and more of a team aspect, and not just best team ever, but I want to do best offense ever. We'll compare offense and defense. Thomas, I want to start with you. What is the best offense you have ever seen or maybe not seen in the NFL?
The 2013 Broncos were unbelievable. 5 different players with 10 touchdowns. Demaryius Thomas, Wes Welker, Eric Decker, obviously Manning, Noshawn Marino, Julius Thomas. That offense is stacked. They had a very good offensive line. Didn't end up winning the Super Bowl, lost to the Seahawks, but Manning threw for 50-plus touchdowns, 5,000-plus yards. And just the idea that you have 5 guys scored 10 touchdowns, I mean, I didn't even mention Monty Ball, 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. Like, lot of skill in that offense.
So that team was absolutely stacked, and Manning, he set the single season record for passing touchdowns and yards, and then the team set the most 606 points. It's the most ever, and still is. And I think that is interesting with 17 games that have been added in the past now 3 seasons, I believe, that no one's really even come within like 60, 70 points of that. Dylan, best offense.
Yeah, Broncos are going to be my pick too. I mean, just a special group. You had Peyton Manning out there in his older age. I thought once he left the Colts, it was going to be about it for him, but he looked like his younger self there. I mean, maybe one of the better versions of Peyton Manning we've ever seen. I mean, just a special group of guys. I mean, it's a shame they didn't win that Super Bowl that year, but maybe running into one of the greatest defenses ever, too. So
That will be our next
might be
topic.
getting too far ahead.
You're jumping ship a little bit into the future. Ryan, we'll wrap up with the offenses.
So initially I was thinking the Broncos, but to set a little bit something different here, I got to go with the 07 Patriots. The connection between Randy Moss and Tom Brady, I mean, come on. That's pure
17-0.
football. 17-0. Yeah, we don't talk about that part. But, I mean, 23 touchdowns for Randy Moss. I mean, you could argue it's the greatest season for any football player ever. It was poetry in motion.
Now, I will say, of the ones that I had in mind, whether it's the 13 Broncos, I think 07 Patriots is a good one. I was also having the 18 Rams. They weren't the best offense in the league at the time, but they were top 5 in rushing and passing, which I think is a rare thing that we haven't really seen much. It was Todd Gurley, and then obviously Jared Goff's really like emergence into this league. Moving into the defense, I found it interesting. The thing is, the defensive ones I have, all of them are Super Bowl winners. The offense isn't. Defense wins championships. I think that's pretty well known. Ryan, I'll go to you. Best defense of all time.
You know, I'm going to go with, I believe it was 2000 Baltimore Ravens. Ray Lewis. I mean, Ray Lewis. That's what I'm going to say. I mean, when you talk about a guy who could instill fear in an offense, I mean, there's no one like Ray Lewis.
Tom Brady didn't even want to throw in the middle.
He did not. And you know what I'll say is that team was able to shut down anything that they put in front of it. And I feel like when it comes to being, you know, some of the best defenses aren't the prettiest teams to watch. You know, some of them, especially in the older times. But for a team in 2000, they had one of the flashiest offenses, defenses, one of the most talented groups of guys ever. And I think it's hard to argue with that one.
Including the playoffs, they had 12 games where they held opponents under 10. I think that's unreal.
Yeah, you know, we're playing the game of who gets to talk first right now. I'm going with the Bullies of Baltimore too.
Yes, sir.
Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Goose in the front. That team was just dominant. They their teams that played them average under 10 points per game throughout the season. Just dominance on that side of the ball and just enough offensive play to win a Super Bowl.
It's one of the fewest points per games allowed in the modern era of football.
Yeah, I'll give us a different answer. I kind of probably forecasted mine already, that Legion of Boom Seahawks team. I mean, talk about a defense, great defensive backs. They had aura. I mean, everything you consider when you're talking about one of the greatest ever. They were spectacular. They denied what we all determine as the best offense.
Held them to 8.
I mean, just spectacular group of guys.
Our photo guy, Josh Pose, in the background was pretty enamored that no one mentioned the 85 Bears. Pretty much the OG pinnacle defense right there. I'll give him a shout out even as a Packers fan. But we're segueing into a different sport. It's time to hit the hardwood. Some basketball goats. Probably the toughest GOAT debate in any sport ever, and it keeps getting tougher because he keeps playing at such a high level, and that is with Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Ryan, you're first.
You know, I think it's a hard debate here. You really can go either way. And I'm going to go for Michael Jordan, with no disrespect to LeBron James. And I think there's a possibility when LeBron James retires that I'm going to change my mind. But for today, I'm going to say Michael Jordan, 6-0 in the finals, the most dominant player, debatably at the guard position in NBA history, because we got some guy down low I'm not going to mention. But, I mean, when it comes to the numbers, when it comes to the finals, there's nobody like Michael Jordan. He had the notoriety. Everyone knows who he is on the cover of Wheaties, the Jordan shoes. I mean, he's got it all.
Rocking some Jordan shoes right now.
Exactly.
It's about LeBron's, Thomas.
You know, Jordan did have just the universal impact, but every time I watch LeBron right now, 39 years old, just last week outscored the Clippers by himself in the fourth quarter, 40,000 points. LeBron just continues to impress. What he's doing at this age isn't just unprecedented in basketball. It's unprecedented in basically all of sports. He is a dominant player in the league, and he's 39 years old, guys. It's just unheard of. So I'm going to go with LeBron, but you know, no discredit to Jordan anyways.
20 consecutive All-Star appearances for the King, and it just seems like he keeps building a resume that's already complete.
I mean, you don't see longevity like this ever. In like many sports, you don't get a run like this. You don't keep going. I think it's LeBron. I think how he elevates a team. He took terrible, terrible teams to finals runs. Those early Cavs teams that he took, it's him and Big Z. That last Cav team, we have that graphic. It's him, Kyle Korver, Jeff Green. Like that finals runs versus the Warriors, like they may not be coming out on top of these, but the fact that he can even get them there of just absolute bums around them, I think LeBron's my GOAT there.
All right, so we're going to segue into college basketball a little bit in honor of the school we go to, one of the most historic basketball schools in the nation, and it's with Indiana players. Who is your IU basketball GOAT, Dylan?
I think you got to go Scott May. I mean, was the key piece of that 1976 team, the last ever undefeated team. And I'd argue that if he doesn't get hurt in 1975, they go back-to-back undefeated seasons, and that would be just ridiculous. So, I mean, he was the key to those teams. I think he's probably my Indiana GOAT. I think there's a claim to be made about Calbert Cheaney, too, though.
Calbert Cheaney, all-time leading scorer in IU basketball history. I think can't go wrong with that choice, Thomas.
Well, I'm not going to go wrong with that choice. It's Calbert Cheaney for me, highest scorer in IU history, 1 title. It's just you can't write the history of IU basketball without Calbert Cheaney, and to me, he has that pedigree of just being the best player that has ever stepped foot in Bloomington.
Ryan.
You know, it's hard for me on this one. There's so many names I could go back and forth on, and once again, this may be kind of a basic answer, but I want to go Isaiah Thomas. I mean, I feel like myself, it's kind of hard to deny that. He came in that year, won the national championship, and he only played for 2 years, which may not have the longevity of some of these other guys, but when it comes to being the image of a basketball team, especially in the collegiate level, it's hard to pass on a guy like Isaiah Thomas with his notoriety across the NBA, across the NCAA. We don't see stars like that too often.
Now, obviously, in the post-Knight era, it's been kind of a bumpy road for Indiana. There's been some very positive moments, like the Sweet 16 appearance just a few years ago, and then obviously seeing last year with Trace Jackson Davis what he's done. That's where I'm curious. Who is your post-Bob Knight era best IU basketball player of all time? And I want to go with you, Thomas, first.
You know, I might be biased, but I'm going Trace Jackson Davis. He was dominant from the minute he stepped foot in Bloomington, and he was dominant just beyond belief when he was here. He never won a title. He never really got deep into the postseason, but there are few guys, when you look at IU basketball in recent history, that have any sort of touch on TJD, and I think he was just as dominant as we've seen in recent IU history.
Dylan.
Yeah, I love the TJD pick. I think he has a case, even non-post-Knight era, just all time to be one of those better Hoosiers. But I got to switch it. I got to give it up to a guard, Yogi Ferrell. Indiana, few and far between
fan
have we
favorite.
seen guards like him. We would love to have a guard like him in current day. I mean, Yogi Ferrell, just did it. He did it for all 4 years. He was a part of 2 Sweet 16 runs. A great player, undersized, but man, he could knock down the three-pointer.
And Ryan.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Yogi Ferrell. When you want to talk about culture, when you want to talk about having the support from the fans, you can't really pass on Yogi Ferrell. He has the longevity that you want to see in a college basketball player. He can score the ball. He can do anything you want him to, and we saw some great efficiency from him in the postseason, and I think it's hard to stay away from Yogi Ferrell.
Now, speaking of postseason, and in honor of the month we're currently in, it's March. And before we head to break, I have one final question, and it has to do with March Madness. Now, this one's kind of out in the air. I'm going to just say, what is the best March Madness moment ever? Whether it's a specific run by a player, specific run by a team, it could be one singular game, or the entire bracket as a whole. Dylan, I want to start with you. Best March Madness ever.
I'm a big Carmelo Anthony fan. That's where I wanted to go originally, but there's no single-player run more special, in my opinion, than the Cardiac Kimber run. Started in the Big East tournament, went all the way through. Just a special college player, Kemba Walker. He was great in the NBA, but there's no topping his college basketball legacy.
His run was elite on both ends, especially.
Special.
I'm going to go with a little bit of a wild card. I'm going to say Dante DiVincenzo.
Ooh.
Kind of a weird one, but you know
Okay.
what? He had one of the greatest March Madness runs ever. I believe he had 31 points in the national championship.
Off the bench.
Off the bench. Since when do you ever expect your top scorer to ever come off the bench? It seems like a miscommunication error there, but it wasn't. He was phenomenal. He had a great team with him. National championship. One of the most fun players I've ever watched in college basketball.
Jay Wright solidifying himself as like Villanova blue blood
Yes,
right
sir.
there. Thomas.
When we were communicating earlier this week, I kind of took Best March Madness in the literal what the words mean.
Yeah.
And so my moment's going to be the 2018 March Madness.
That's a beautiful one.
You had UMBC taking down Virginia. Loyola Chicago makes it to the Final Four. One of the best games I've ever seen personally. Kansas beating Duke in overtime in the Elite Eight. Mikhail Luke hits the 3 to tie the game. Just one of the best March Madnesses, and it ends with Villanova taking down Michigan.
I will say a very underrated year is last season's. Outside of the championship game, had a great Final Four matchup with San Diego State and FAU, which both teams, great story that they made there from mid-major level. Also, the second ever 16 seed to beat a 1 seed with Fairleigh Dickinson over, what team was it? I think Purdue. That's right. Sorry, had to bash a little bit. But that's going to wrap up the opening segment. Make sure you stick around because after the break, we're going to crown the GOAT of the GOATs in the form of a tournament. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the toss-up. I have officially switched my seat, which, yes, I am terrified. Not really. But we have a very special game to play, and once again, in honor of March. It's a little March Madness, but in the style of GOATs. It's to crown the GOAT of the GOATs. And how it works is each of us, the panelists, will have our own quadrants. I'm up here in the top left, Ryan in the bottom right, Thomas in the top right, and Dylan in the bottom right. And how it will work is we will advance one of our guys to the Final Four, where then we will take a vote. I will be excluded from the voting process to crown the championship game and eventual champion of the GOATs. I'm going to get things started right away. The matchup is Michael Jordan versus Mike Trout, and I got to pick Michael Jordan in this one, the GOAT of basketball. He's advancing to the Elite Eight. My second first-round matchup is Secretariat, the Triple Crown winner, against Tom Brady, the GOAT of football. This is a tough one, and what really comes down to this matchup is who has the better movie. Is it 80 for Brady, or is it Secretariat? And my pick is Secretariat. Come on now. In the Elite Eight, we have Michael Jordan versus Secretariat. I want a horse. Secretariat is advancing to the Final Four. We'll get it off, and there he goes. Secretariat is officially in the Final Four. Now, Ryan, your first-round matchup is Michael Phelps versus Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oof, that's a tough one. I just got to say, Secretariat, not great in press conferences, but
Yeah, he's
certainly
tough.
performer on the field. I'm going to take Michael Phelps, though. Dominance like we've never seen before.
Now, your second first-round matchup is Barry Bonds versus Wayne Gretzky.
I'm going to take Wayne Gretzky. I'm going to take the great one.
Now to send someone to the Final Four, it's Michael Phelps or Wayne Gretzky.
Think I got to roll with Team USA. Michael Phelps, send them.
Michael Phelps, look at all these medals he has, and now it's officially Thomas's turn. I'll let you take care of business yourself.
Oh, man. Getting rid of Gretzky early is really, really tough. Bo Jackson, Usain Bolt. I really don't think this is a question. Bo Jackson was a decent running back, pretty good baseball player. Usain Bolt's the fastest guy to ever live. Let's be honest. Serena Williams and LeBron James. Serena Williams has an insane pedigree. 24 Grand Slam champions. Best tennis player of all time on the female side. But you look at LeBron as one of the best athletes to ever play their sport. Ever play any sport for that matter. LeBron moves on for me. Gets difficult here. Two of the best athletes in terms of just pure athleticism who have ever played. But I'm going to have to go with LeBron. It's just 40,000 points, doing it at age 39. Nobody's beating the king.
LeBron James to the Final Four. Dylan, let's wrap it up. Your first matchup is Lionel Messi and Simone Biles.
I have a brutal quadrant here. I mean, some of the greatest to do all their sports. I got the greatest gymnast versus the greatest soccer player ever. I got to go Messi. I mean, adored by millions. I think he's got to be the one there. What's my second matchup, Joe? I can't really see.
It's Novak Djokovic and Tiger Woods.
Yeah, so then you got greatest tennis player versus arguably your greatest golf player. I got to go Tiger, man, for what he did for the sport of golf. He's got to advance. And then for that matchup, Tiger versus Messi, my heart says Tiger Woods. I want to say Tiger Woods. Let's go Tiger Woods.
Tiger.
Messi, get out of here.
I went
The Final
premature.
Four is officially set, and no, you might not have expected it, but it's Secretariat versus Michael Phelps, and then on the other side, LeBron James versus Tiger Woods. So now I am out of the voting mix. Let's plead our cases, and we'll start with Secretariat versus Michael Phelps. Who is going to the national championship? What is your vote, Ryan?
I mean, put that horse in a swimming pool. Put Phelps on the track. I'm taking Phelps. I'm sorry.
One vote, Phelps. All we need is 2 votes to send him to the chip.
How many gold medals sitting around Phelps' neck there?
I don't even know.
You don't
It's a
need to
lot.
count them.
Too many.
Two votes is all he
Is
needs.
he advancing? Dylan, I'll let you plead your case. So it's not a sweep.
Secretariat, I wanted him to advance. It would have been the funny pick. I mean, Michael Phelps couldn't beat him in a race around a track, but I mean, he couldn't win a triple crown, but I respect the Phelps pick.
Fantastic run from Secretariat, and now to set up our national championship or GOAT championship, we got to get to the other Final Four. LeBron James and Tiger Woods. Dylan, I'll let you start with the voting this time.
Oh, man, I love Tiger Woods, but he's the greatest basketball player of all time. LeBron has to go on to the final.
Thomas.
You know what? For the entertainment aspect, I'm not going to let it be a clean sweep. LeBron, obviously a legend, but Tiger Woods, when you look at athletes in straight primes, peak of their careers, I don't know if anybody has ever been as good at a sport as Tiger Woods was at golf for a period of time.
Tiger Woods completely changed the way that people play golf nowadays, and to send one to the championship round, Tiger or LeBron, Ryan.
Joe, I'll tell you one thing. You kicked my basketball go out in the first round against a horse. I'm taking Tiger Woods.
Tiger versus Michael Phelps in the national championship of GOATs.
Oh, it's all back.
Come on.
It's all good. It's
gonna
very
fall.
well made if you can't tell. So there you have it. The national championship of GOATs is officially here, and time for one final vote. Michael Phelps or Tiger Woods? Thomas, I'll let you start.
You know, when I think of moments, I think of Phelps and that relay team coming back against France, one of the best Olympic moments of all time. But Vern Lundquist sitting there, ball goes up in the Masters, rolls down, sits there, and falls. Tiger Woods for me.
Tiger Woods has one vote. Dylan.
Oh, man. I never thought he'd make it this far. I wanted Tiger to make it this far all the way, but I mean, he really popularized the sport of golf like no other athlete really ever has. I don't care if it's going to go 2-0 here. I got Tiger Woods winning it all here.
There is Tiger Woods, so he officially is crowned. But Ryan, I'll allow you to plead a case if you felt differently.
I will say I felt differently. And from the bottom of my heart, Michael Phelps, I know you're watching right now. I want to tell you that my vote was for you. Okay, my vote was for you. But you know what? Congratulations to Tiger.
You know,
So a big, yeah.
we were talking earlier. I think you missed someone on here. We're talking about GOATs.
I did.
All we've been doing is talking about GOATs. None of you have really thought about what I was talking about. How is Joey Chestnut not on this board?
The Zionsville native should have been on this board. I can't lie. I saw
Greatest
him.
competitor of all
He was
time.
at a basketball halftime show, and he 3v1 people. I forget exactly what he was eating, but it was something ridiculous. But congratulations to Tiger Woods. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. But that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. As always, be sure to follow along with at IUSTV Sports on both Twitter and Instagram, as well as our own Instagram at the Tossup IU and at the Tossup23, respectively. With that, there's one thing left to do. It's always the notebook. Toss it up, catch it. I'm not the GOAT, but we'll see you after spring break.